Hi everybody, it's Amadou Han here and welcome to ABA Africans Building Africa podcast, where I chat with inspiring African entrepreneurs who are participating to the development of Africa. Now allow me to introduce our special guest, Oni Aniado, a global leadership speaker, author, entrepreneur, and the founder of Oni Aniado Media House and B1 Coaching. Oni travels around the world teaching entrepreneurs how to become distinguished on their chosen field. And today we chat more about how he became an international speaker and what he's doing for Africa. Let's get to it. Africans Building Africa, for African entrepreneurs, by African entrepreneurs, working together for the sake of Africa. Let's get to work. So Onyi, can you tell us a bit about your story? How did you brand yourself to become an international global leader?
Yes, Amadou. So my name is Oni Aniado. Well, my life story is called From Detention to Distinction. I was born in Hackney, East London, to a 2.4 family. My father, my mother, myself, and my sister. Unfortunately, at a very early age, I think if my memory serves me right, when me and my sister was 8 and 7 or 6 and 7 respectively, my dad left. So for the majority of my childhood and my teenage years, my mother, my best mother in the world, brought me and my sister by herself. Thankfully, 6 years ago on Father's Day, me and my dad reunited after 25 plus years, and it was a very emotional time. So I went through the education system, school, college, university. When I got to the second year of university, I began living a particular life called the street life. Now, for those that don't know what the street life is, I mean, in America, I suppose they call it the thug life. But in the UK, they call it the street life. It was just that, young men, in this case, young black men who they have no vision, no purpose, just living a life of, that particular lifestyle. It wasn't really gangs per se, but I suppose it was a group of young black men who didn't have no vision, no purpose, no direction. And unfortunately, in that 10-year period, I went to prison twice. 6 of my friends got murdered, and I nearly got shot dead. So I lived a real hectic life, to tell the truth. Sometimes I look back and I really give thanks because it was, a bullet missed me by literally millimeters. A guy really wanted to shoot me dead, and it was hectic. It was tough.
We have a lot of Africans moving here at a young age, including myself, who have no purpose and no vision. The only thing is just that they want to be a thug, or, they want to follow the mainstream media just so they can at least, kind of fit in the culture. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you have to admit that you are different. Sometimes you have to admit that you're willing to be someone who's actually not going to follow the main media. But how did you really manage to change your life around?
Yes, very good question. So obviously, the latter stage of living the street life, I was fed up of being fed up. One of the greatest songs of all times by Labi Safi, There's Something Inside, So Strong. I can't really sing. I'm more of a speaker anyway. So I knew deep down inside of me there was something better than the shootouts, better than, dodging bullets, better than prison, better than just living that whole lifestyle. The only job I saw myself doing was becoming a counsellor, working in North London for some strange reason. That's the only job I did. I never saw myself becoming a doctor, lawyer, or accountant, even though as a Nigerian, that's the job every mother wants their child to be, doctor, lawyer, or pharmacist, whatever. The 2nd of November 2008, I became a born-again Christian, and then the journey started from there. So fast forward 2016, as you said in the introduction, I speak on leadership, entrepreneurship, on educational, business, and corporate platforms around the world, teaching people how to become distinguished. So from my mission of distinction, I teach people how to come out of the prison of lack of vision, come out of the prison of procrastination, come out of the prison of excuses. From there, I've written 12 books, published 2, and that's really serving my generation with my time, my talents, and my tenacity.
What message would you say to those Africans who have the opportunity to be in the US or the UK that's just basically throwing their life away? What message would you give them?
Well, the individual has to realize that what you carry, you carry purpose, you carry leadership potential. And that's why I said from one of my books, I said that leadership isn't about age, but rather leadership is about impact, influence, and inspiration. So you've heard my story. I was a young man. I have no vision, no dreams, no purpose. It's vital. It's critical. I mean, I don't listen to rap music anymore, but Tupac, one of the greatest revolutionaries of our time, said it. Even a genius asks his questions. So it's important as a young person to ask questions. What's my gifts? What's my talent? What's my passions? What do I see? Who am I listening to? Because as a great man said, who has your ears to determine what you become? Who has your eye to determine what you see and believe?
As Jim Rod said, you are the 5 people you spend the most time with. So it's very important to know who you are and just know who you're hanging around with and know what you're listening to, because those are very important. And I thank you for sharing that experience as well. As an international global leader based in the UK, how are you participating to the development of Africa?
Okay, so for my message of distinction, I created a program, a talk called How to Become an African Leader of Distinction, or How to Become an African Entrepreneur of Distinction. And so from that thought leadership, I created three foundational, how can I describe it? Three foundational quotes, but I believe it's more than quotes. It's actually a lifestyle. So I suppose I'll go through each quote and then we can talk about it. So the first quote, teaching is, Africa was once called the Dark Continent, but in this new era, Africa will become the light of the world. Africa was once called the Dark Continent, but in this new era, Africa will become the light of the world.
Can you elaborate on that for a little bit?
Yes, of course. So when I was in secondary school, I remember very clearly, I was talking to one of my friends about this the other day. Anyway, funny enough, when I was in secondary school, the only images, I think one of the subjects we studied was geography, and the only images we saw of Africa, literally for 5 years, was starving children, was flies, was dry land, was, and they would have fundraisers, national fundraisers, Live Aid, Band Aid, where they would raise millions of pounds for starving children in Africa. And up to this day, I still don't know where the money went anyway, because, when they say Africa, Nigeria is corrupt, well, anyway, but we won't go there anyway. So the only image we saw of Africa was of starving children, was of dry land, was of, famine. So Africa was once called the Dark Continent. They've been calling us the Dark Continent for hundreds of years. But in this new era, Africa will become the light of the world. And how will Africa become the light of the world? Because there is a generation of young Africans who will be equipped, who will be empowered, who will be educated on how to lead with distinction. They will be taught how to lead with their vision, with their creativity. Because once you lead with creativity and you give birth creative idea to generational vision, you become a light, you become a solution center, you give direction. And that's what I believe. That's where that quote came from. I was at an African summit early this year in April, and it went pure. That quote came out to me like fire. Africa was once the Dark Continent. And listen, Africa and natural resources. We know Africa is not a country but a continent. But for example, in the UK and even in the US, I believe, they've got an aging population and no natural resources.
Africa is known to be the youngest continent in the world because we have such a young population growing up.
Yes, exactly. And once that population is inspired, motivated, challenged with their personal leadership, their personal vision that is not about them, I'm telling you, we will become the light of the world. Because as you said, it's the largest growing youth population. No other continent in the world has that. And natural resources. And them two combination will become the light of the world.
So why and how should African entrepreneurs become distinguished on their chosen field?
Okay, brilliant. So my second quote, we first established the foundation of why Africa will come. Why? But then who is an African entrepreneur? So late 2015, I came up with the following definition. An African entrepreneur is a leader of excellence, trailblazer, and pioneer who constantly brings change to their generation. An African entrepreneur is a leader of excellence, trailblazer, and pioneer who constantly brings change to their generation.
As Africans, sometimes we have something holding us back. Sometimes it's not about the fact that we are scared, or it's not about the fact that we don't know what we're doing, but it's just that we want to help our families and succeed. And that risk of trying something and failing is bringing us shame in front of our parents because they don't know that. So how can we go about overcoming that and showing our parents that it's possible?
Okay, well, the entrepreneurs, whether in Africa or around the world, that we respect, we regard, and we recognize, understand that failure is a part of distinction. Failure is a part of entrepreneurial journey. Me, I failed a few times. You know, I could tell you that for free. But like I said, an African entrepreneur is a leader of excellence. When you realize that you can't follow excellence, you can't follow mediocrity. You have to lead with excellence in your chosen field. It brings a new level of responsibility. It begins a new level of accountability. It brings a new level of excitement. So it's critical, it's vital that as an African entrepreneur, because that's the yardstick I want every African entrepreneur to become. Lead with excellence, but also you're a trailblazer. Because if you're not trailblazing and a pioneer, but instead of becoming a producer, you're just a consumer, you know, and you're consuming excuses, consuming worry, consuming fear, rather than trailblazing and pioneering new thoughts, new products, new services for you and your generation. So it's not even about you, it's about your generation, it's about your family, it's about society as a whole, who constantly brings change to their generation. Listen, for Africa, if an individual is listening and really wants to become an African entrepreneur of distinction and become a reference point in their generation, their excuses, they have to give up on their excuses. One of my quotes, I think from my 10th book or 9th book, is, how can we tell people never give up when some haven't even started yet? How can we tell people never give up when some haven't even started yet? They haven't even started giving birth to creative ideas. They haven't even started networking. They haven't even started formulating their brand. They haven't even started seeing the future.
So as entrepreneurs, we all face challenges throughout our journey. What challenges did you go through to build your brand, and how did you overcome them?
I think the biggest challenge I had was the financial challenge, and that was a financial challenge. In regards to building my brand, I realized from early that social media is free. I always tell my audience that Henry Ford, the founder of the Ford T-car model, the Ford car, in the early 1920s, he didn't have any social media, but people in the UK, people in Europe heard about his brand, about his distinction. So I think, to be honest, to answer your question, the biggest challenges was the financial side of it. But that meant I had to do extra work, put in extra commitment, you know, think outside of the box, be more strategic. So yeah, the biggest challenge I would say definitely was the financial side of it.
And how did you basically overcome those financial challenges?
Stretching myself, networking more, being more distinct with my message. I always tell people that social media is free of charge, and if you know how to use it effectively, efficiently, and with excellence, the customers, the clients will be coming knocking at your door.
As you previously stated, you have a couple of books written already, and
Yes.
some of the most common ones that I saw so far is The Doorway to Distinction and Hitting the Target. What advice would you give to those who would like to write a book someday?
Contact me. I've written 12 books. My last book, my 12th book, I wrote it in 5 hours when I was homeless. So you have to think original. You have to think originality, simplicity, and creativity. Yeah, originality, simplicity, and creativity. So, for example, my second latest book, which is out now, called The Doorway to Distinction, 200 quotes to inspire you to reach levels of excellence. The originality comes from the fact that in the history of literature, and I say it with all confidence and more importantly with all humility, is that no author has ever written a book with 200 original quotes. So 200 of my own quotes, 25 on excellence, 25 on distinction, 25 on vision, and 25 on goals. But not just quotes. I also have thought leadership that teaches, equips, empowers, and educate the listener, so the reader, how to become distinguished in their chosen field. So it's about creativity, originality, and it's also about the simplicity of it. I don't think it's more than 115 pages, but, gone are the days of reading a book that's got 300 pages in it and it's got jargon after jargon. So simplicity, originality, and of course, creativity.
That sounds like a great book to have, and it's available on Amazon, right?
Yes, so The Doorway to Distinction, 200 quotes to inspire you to reach levels of excellence, is available on Amazon Kindle. So it's available on Amazon Kindle and also as an ebook on my website, which is www.oamediahouse.com. www.oamediahouse.com. And one advice I can give to potential authors is, once you write your first book, the second book's going to be easy. The third book's going to be easy. But the main thing is that, a great man once said, a book is a 90-minute conversation. I think it was Dr. Mike Murdoch. He said a book is a 90-minute conversation. We've been speaking for nearly 25 minutes on and off. So a book is just your thoughts and your ideology.
Currently, I see that you sit on the board, on an advisory board of Founders for School, which is one of the most influential independent network of tech expert investors and professionals in the UK. So, as startups, at what moment of our company should we seek advisors to create an advisory board?
When you're at that stage when you know when to ready to scale up. One of my advice I give to entrepreneurs is don't rush into things too quickly. Don't get staff when you don't necessarily need staff. Don't get a building if you don't necessarily need to get a building. Don't buy the car if you don't necessarily need a car. I always tell my audience, think big, but act smarter. So what you actually know, two facts are the best. Even a genius answers questions. So you have to ask yourself, do I need an advisory board members now? And if I do, why? And you as an individual will know that answer. 100%.
You deliver talks and workshops into IDM. So can you tell us a bit what IDM stands for and how is it benefiting African entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so once again, it's in how social media is really fascinating. I mean, majority of my connections and contacts, etc., is via social media. And yeah, IDM is a African-based institute who really, like my ideology, is there to empower this generation of Africans. Because sometimes we always talk about the next generation, but we never talk about this generation. So, we've been in talks just to really share knowledge and equip Africans how to scale up, how to stand out, how to think generational. Because sometimes as Africans, we think, just eating for the next day and feeding my family. But we need to now think generational. We need to now think global. And yeah, IDM, they do a lot of work in just changing the mindset, through online and offline, presentations, workshops, etc. Just really stretching our minds and establishing Africans on how to think big, and to work even bigger.
And is this because IDM is a new African business school? If the business school done online or is actually done in Africa itself?
Yes, so it's done in Africa itself.
And mainly in sub-Saharan Africa?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
Absolutely. That's great. I mean, you guys are doing great things, kind of providing at least leadership classes that will help mind, African entrepreneurs just to be able to follow their dreams, which is really what this podcast is all about. What are your thoughts on how to create an innovative company in Africa?
I use one of my quotes: start local, think global, and constantly raise the bar of excellence. Start local, whether you're in Ethiopia, whether you're in Lagos, whether you're in South Africa, whether you're in Ghana, whether you're in Mozambique. Start local. Be known for that one thing principle. Facebook is known for one thing. BMW is known for one thing. Gucci is known for one thing. And that one thing comes from your gifts, your talents, and your passion. So start local, think global, realizing that social media now has connected the world. One of my quotes from my 7th book is, entrepreneur, the local market has gone global, but now the global market is now local. So when you're doing your business, when you're selling your products or you're offering your products or service online, when you're building your brand, don't think as a local champion. Think global and constantly raise the bar of excellence. Excellence and branding from my teaching go hand in hand. And excellence and branding is your vision, your voice, and your values.
I think that's a major key, especially in African entrepreneurs, because most of us, we focus on local. Because if you look at African entrepreneurs, they all create great local products, but they only think small in that local environment instead of really kind of realizing the opportunity that their products can reach globally.
Yes. I mean, one of my third foundational quotes that we didn't go over is, Africa is crying out for entrepreneurial leaders and for leaders who are entrepreneurial. Africa is crying out for entrepreneurial leaders and for leaders who are entrepreneurial. So now is the time. Africa doesn't need any more prime ministers. Africa doesn't need any more presidents. Africa doesn't need any more governors. Africa is crying out for entrepreneurial leaders and for leaders who are entrepreneurial. So now is the time to step up. Literally, now is the time.
Absolutely. And it takes the courage just to stand out and be a leader and create a business that will sustain itself and be a viable business in African market. So our audience is mainly young African entrepreneurs looking to invest or start a business in Africa. What advice would you give them?
Know the terrain, work with integrity, and always see new possibilities and opportunities to serve.
So the last part of this interview is called the ABA moment. And what I like to do with the ABA moment is basically for my invitees to basically give me a short and sweet answers and to the point. So I'll ask you a couple of questions and just one and short, sweet answers. So the first one is, if you were to live in one country in Africa and start a business, where would it be?
Nigeria, Nigeria, Nigeria.
And why Nigeria?
One, I'm a Nigerian, and two, I'm a Nigerian, and three, I'm a Nigerian.
Well, say no more.
No, please don't.
So if you had only 1,000 to start a business or invest in Africa, and knowing what you know now, where would you invest your money?
I would invest in Nigeria, and I would invest in people. I would find two up-and-coming entrepreneurs who are dedicated, disciplined, and determined to become distinguished, and give them $500 each and say, this is seed capital. Now is the time to rise up. What would you do? You don't have to pay it back. What can you do with this $500? Make it work.
Have you read a book which had a huge impact on yourself? If so, what's the name and author of the book?
Okay, the latest book I'm reading, which has had quite profound, I must say, is called The Doorway to Distinction, and the author is Oni Enyado, to tell the truth. Yeah. One of the, people always ask me, oh, who's your inspiration? Who challenges you? I always tell my audience, you have to challenge yourself. You have to inspire yourself. So even now, I'm reading my book with 200 original quotes. I'm thinking, how else can I give birth to a generational and global creative idea? That's the answer. The Doorway to Distinction by Oni Enyado.
So in your opinion, what is the next breakthrough idea or business opportunity in Africa?
I think the next business opportunities are people, but specifically young people. Young people are the lifeblood of Africa. So now is the time to coach, mentor, support, invest in not just any African entrepreneur. I'm not saying that, but in people who have got a little track record, who have got a good marketing plan and a business plan, who are really passionate about bringing change to Africa. That's the best opportunity, I believe.
Absolutely. And you are doing a great thing by molding young African minds just to become a great entrepreneurial leaders. And thank you for all you're doing. This conversation has been inspirational, and I'm sure that a lot of our audience will learn from this. And if not reach out, at least get your book to read your quotes and know your story, and at least, learn from some of the challenges that you went through. And Onyi, thank you very much for joining us. This has been inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, if anyone wants to contact me, they can contact me via www.oamediahouse.com. That's www.oamediahouse.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Oni Enyado, and of course Twitter, Oni Enyado 777. That's ONYIANYADO 777. But if you just go to my website, www.oamediahouse.com, all my social media links there, email address, and any questions, anything, please do contact me.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity, Amadou.
Thanks everyone for listening. Please join me on the next episode where I chat with an inspiring leader and someone who's making a huge difference in his community in Ghana, Elijah Amo-Ado, who's the founder and executive director of Food for All program. We chat about food waste and the challenges farmers and food companies are facing in Ghana. If you enjoyed this episode so much, please go to iTunes and leave us a review where I read each one of them in order to improve this podcast. Also, don't forget to check out our newly updated website, africansbuildingafrica.com, where we featured African entrepreneur stories and their businesses. Thanks for listening and see you on the next episode.